Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I am here with Sidney Kersey's family, 3 generations of women, actually. We've got Miss Debbie, Sidney's mother, and then we have her sister, Jamie Brand, and then Sidney's daughter, Mary Jane. Hi, ladies. How are you?
Hi.
So good to have you here advocating for your daughter, sister, mom, Sidney Kersey. And yeah, let's just jump right in here because I definitely think that we have a lot to talk about as it relates to the case. Miss Debbie, Sidney is your daughter.
Yes.
Can you give us a little family history? How many siblings she had, where you guys grew up?
Okay. I had 4 daughters. That's Sydney, Lindy, Jamie, and Mary. And Sydney was the oldest. Uh, we grew up they grew up in Waverly Hall, Georgia. They went to Grace Christian until I think Sydney was in the fifth grade. And then we put them in public schools out here. Uh, Sydney was a wonderful, wonderful child. She when she was a mother, a second mother to the girls. She helped me tremendously. Um, if someone passed away, she wouldn't ask. The first question she'd ask me is, "Mama, were they saved? Are they going to heaven?" And Sydney, she's a fighter, but also she was a giver, and she'd give you the shirt off her back. And these photos, the right one is the last photo we took with Sid. It was at her granddaughter's second birthday. And the one on the left is just us. And I don't remember when that was, but that's her sisters and myself.
And Mary Jane
And Mary Jane and Randy are, which is Sydney's children, are also in the one on the left.
Aw. And so, yeah, on the right photo here, you guys, you have Jamie, her sister, on the far left. Next person in the green.
It's me.
Yep.
There you are. Okay.
Yeah.
I need to put my glasses on, apparently. And the person in the middle.
Lindy.
Okay, gotcha. And then right there in the dress, you have the beautiful Sidney. And then to the right of her is
Mary.
Gotcha. How would you describe your daughter, Miss Debbie? I mean, was she would her friends consider her a good friend? Someone that they would, just love being around? What were some of her hobbies?
She loved her friends, and her friends loved her, but don't cross her. Like I said, she was a fighter. She loved her family. She would go to war for her family, her children. And at that time, she only had one grandbaby, and she loved that grandbaby, says Stella. But she loved fishing, um,
Auburn football.
Yeah, football, Auburn, yes, Auburn, straight. And like I said, fishing, hunting, anything outdoors. She really loved outdoors.
Oh, true Southern girl right there. Love it.
Yeah.
And Waverly Hall is Harris County, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Gotcha. And that was where she was later recovered after she went missing, is in that same county.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay. Jamie here. Jamie is Sidney's sister. Jamie, could you give us and give the viewers a kind of like a high level overview on the disappearance dates, where it happened, and when she was found?
Well, it all started on Wednesday, September 18th, 2019, when she went missing. She had called my mom earlier that morning. She was at her on-again, off-again boyfriend's house at the time. And mom talked to her, and she sounded fine. And she even talked to her youngest daughter, too. Well, later on, nobody had heard from her, and mama was getting worried. And I think she called her boyfriend and asked, "Have you seen or heard from Sidney?" And he's like, I last saw her this morning before I went to work, and then she just took off walking." And Thursday, the next day, Mama had went with the guy that Sidney was with for about a year, and they went looking up and down Oak Mountain Road and see if they can find any signs of her, and couldn't find her. And then Friday, the guy that she was with for a year found Sidney's book bag on the side of the road across the street from where Sidney was later found. And he brought the book bag back to Mom's house, and we called 911, and they came out and filed a missing persons report. And then Saturday, well, later that night, me and Mary Jane went behind Justin's house looking, searching for her, and we couldn't find anything. And then Saturday morning, about 11 a.m., we had a little search party, and we went close to where, Justin lived, where the bridge was, and see if we can find anything of, see if we could find Sidney, anything. And we didn't find her, but we found a couple items. Right there, her scrunchie and 2 hair ties. The second photo is where her book bag was found, supposedly, allegedly. The third photo, it shows you tracks going down to where a creek was. Behind the bridge.
Yeah, behind the bridge. And then we didn't find her. And then Sunday, we were at church, and we got a call from the sheriff of Harris County, called Mom and told Mom that he was 90% sure that it was, in fact, Sidney that they had found deep in the woods. And he told Mom that day that Sidney put up a fight and there was definitely foul play, but then came back and said he was given the wrong information. Yeah.
He went on TV.
Yeah, he even went on TV and said that they had a person that was showing admission of guilt, and they were very close to arresting this person, and then nothing else ever came from that.
That's very strange. And I know that you touched on this in the previous live with Olivia's aunt and Heather's community admin. You mentioned that, and I'm assuming this is the same sheriff that you mentioned in that video, that you stated that you grew up with his children, like you went to school with his children, and you thought perhaps that, being a small town, being Southern, that's just how you do when you're Southern. You would go show your respects. He didn't come out. He was too busy meeting the president.
Right.
So he prioritized that. It's really weird that a sheriff would go on news, a news outlet and state such things, yet retract that. Do you believe that there's any, which I guess we can kind of dovetail into here as it relates to persons of interest? You guys have like pretty much one or two people, right, that may have
Mhm.
worked together, in your
Yes.
opinion, that you believe are responsible.
Yes.
What do you believe um, would make the sheriff retract that information? Are these two people that you deem as persons of interest, are they affiliated with anyone?
Well, their families, for
Uh,
one. And we were told that their families would get away with anything.
And we believe they're informants.
wow,
Yeah.
something that we're seeing, as you know, across a lot of these cases is connections and informants or confidential informants and stuff like that. Um, in the teaser video for this live, you had mentioned that, or it may have been the news anchor mentioned that when Sidney was recovered, um, that they ended up cremating her. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And they also burned her clothes, and her clothes were never tested.
No.
Not that we know of.
That's interesting. Sydney's case is open, correct? And it's,
Yes.
is
And
it
it's
open with
undetermined.
undetermined, yet another undetermined? Is it open with the Harris County PD or GBI?
GBI.
GBI. So for those of you that don't know, GBI is the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Now, one thing I could really ask all three of you, and then I definitely want to get into chatting with you, Mary Jane, because I think that you'll offer a lot of really good insight, is really from all three of you. Do you believe that people are trying to cover this up?
Yes.
Most definitely.
And that is something that I think all of our communities, Heather Turner, Natalie Jones, Vince Leake, everyone that you saw in the intro there, has been experiencing. And for you all as a family that's rooted in the South, you're very God-fearing, back the blue, support your brothers and sisters in blue. Does this feel like a slap in the face to you?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Because, right is right, wrong is wrong. No.
My baby didn't deserve, we can't get into it, but she did not deserve what they did to her.
Yeah. Do you feel, how is your involvement, or I should say communication, been with the GBI? Do you believe that they are pursuing things, and are you happy with that working relationship with them?
I mean, what our communication is almost non-existent.
Well, if I don't message them, then, I shouldn't have to message them, to be honest.
Yeah, I
Mm.
totally agree with you there. What is the last update, if you can share without clearly jeopardizing the case because it is open? What and when were the last updates that you received from them?
I can say that there were things found, but we haven't, that was a couple
Months ago.
7 months ago maybe,
Gotcha.
and haven't heard anything back from that.
That they just walked all around it and they didn't find it. And they went out searching, and Jamie and Mary and them found them.
Wow. So yet again, very similar to Aunt Tammy's story about her going around checking ring camera footage. Natalie Jones' community, organizing search efforts themselves. This is just, there's got to be a change. And you said that in the teaser video, Jamie. There has to be a change, and it's a hard conversation to have because, again, a lot of people in these communities are very back the blue, but there's gray area there that I think that you all would agree with, which is that, are we saying a whole police department is corrupt? No, clearly, like that's a liability. You're not going to overexpose corruption, but could there potentially be one to a few people, maybe on task force, for example, that are trying to sweep stuff under the rug? I do want to ask, because we've had to mention this with Natalie's case, as well as Olivia Fowler, Lauren Henderson, etc. Was Sidney mixed up with the wrong people? I would say more so as it relates to people doing illegal things, like perhaps trafficking of drugs, or human trafficking, or because I know that Miss Debbie, and maybe you can tell this story, Sidney did call you or talk to you very briefly before she vanished and said that she needed to talk to you about something. Can you tell that story to the viewers?
Yes, ma'am. She, for maybe a month or 2 months, she would always say, "Mama, I know too much. Mama, I know too much. If something happens to me, look at so and so and so and so, because I know too much." And that morning, she kept saying, "Mama, I want to tell you something. Mama, I got to tell you something." And I think seemed to be very happy. I usually go and get her on Wednesday afternoon, and I asked her, did she want me to come get her that night? And she said, "No, I'll let you know if I do." So she was she was worried. You could tell for a while about her knowing too much, about somebody coming and hurting her family, her grandbaby. I guess I just question myself, why didn't we push her further? Because I mean, we would get up I worked at the time, and she'd come get me at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we'd go outside on the porch and talk, talk, talk. Sometimes she'd come lay in bed with me at that time and talk. And, a lot of times I said, "Sid, I got to go to work in the morning, baby." I just wish that I would have just pushed her a little bit more and not been so selfish about me going to work and getting sleep.
I know that's a regret, but I want you to know, just because we're seeing very similar stories across all of these women's cases, Miss Debbie, that these are more nefarious people that I think the bigger message here, where I'm trying to go with this statement, is that you've got nefarious people that have moved into these good towns, or are enabled, let's just say, to do things as it relates to drugs or drug trafficking, human trafficking, escorting, anything like that. And sadly, when it comes to drug trafficking, there's always someone on the inside that's allowing it to happen. We see this happen with gels, contraband, droning in drugs, stuff like that. So the point I'm trying to make here is that this was unfortunately brought into your communities, and those nefarious people that made your daughter worried, it's almost like you don't have a good, strong fighting chance, as we've seen with Sidney, Olivia, Lauren, Natalie, Heather Turner, even. And so I know that that your daughter loved you, and just like her sister and her daughter, and I hope that gives you some solace. or some for you to be able to rest assured there. Now, Mary Jane, definitely interested in talking to you a little bit more about your mother. Can you talk about how your mother was growing up, like for you being her daughter, your relationship with her?
Well, it wasn't typical. Definitely was not the typical mother-daughter relationship. Like we got at before, she was a part of the wrong crowd. And that's something I had to grow up with my whole life. Having a mom who was on drugs, even a dad who was on drugs. So I mean, our relationship was touch and go. Sometimes it'd be great, sometimes it wouldn't be so great because I'm just a kid, and kids have feelings where you feel she's choosing the drugs over you,
Sure.
which I understand now, being older and everything. It was an addiction, but the good times were good, were really really good. And the few months before she passed away, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Especially after I had my daughter, our relationship just blossomed. To see her be such a fantastic grandmother was really, it made up for everything.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And yeah, nothing's ever perfect. No mother daughter, especially when it's two females. We saw that with Natalie and her mother Elaine. There's always imperfections, but at the end of the day, that's your mom and she loves you, and she was doing the best that she could with her addiction at the time, and her addiction. I'll speak very candidly here. I had a relative that OD'd, small town, and she was 15 years old when she OD'd. And that is one of my driving forces that I didn't really realize until recently, because I understand from a bigger picture, just zooming out to 30,000 feet, that this is where these sinister people, this is why there needs to be change that happens, because these people in these small town communities can't just up and move if they are around the bad crowd and they end up getting addicted to something because they're hanging out with this bad crowd. These nefarious people, and I will say gangs, and I will say homegrown manufacturers, and I will say corrupt law enforcement, they're enabling this to happen because it's transactional. It's money. And these are also people going to church on Sunday, and you're shaking your hand with them on Monday. And I have a big problem with hypocrisy. And as a result of that, you have communities that were once, Miss Debbie, you probably remember your city, Waverly Hall, may have been completely different back in your day. Jamie, it may have been completely different back in your day. Mary Jane, it may be different now. Let's take a minute there. I'd actually like to hear from each of you. Debbie, how would you describe it when you were growing up, Jamie, and then Mary Jane?
When I was growing up, it, like the old saying said, you go outside, you play till the lights come on. You had neighbors watching out for your kids and you. You was really free to go anywhere. I mean, I might be stepping on Jamie, but like I take them to the skating ring, drop them off, and not worry about them. But with nowadays, I mean, Mary Jane, Jamie, they don't let their children out of their sight. Even with Sadie, she's 19 years old, and I am so hard on her about going places. It's just totally different.
Yeah, especially at night. Jamie,
Yeah.
how was it for you growing up? Because I know that
Um,
we're similar in age, so it's still kind of like, you have your car door open and
mhm.
or
Yeah,
unlocked.
you can. I mean, you wouldn't have to worry about locking your doors at night.
Right.
Back, when I was growing up, um, you would go outside and play with the kids, and just now you have to watch your back, and it's the evil, evil world right now.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Mary Jane? I mean, because you're the newest generation, and can you tell a difference? How old are you now, Mary Jane?
I'm 24 now.
24.
Hmm.
So from you being a baby up until now, have you noticed a big difference in your town as it relates to just how things have changed and people
Oh,
are now in addiction?
definitely. Growing up, I mean, I played outside all day long. I went in the woods, played. I could ride around the neighborhood on my bike. No worries in the world. Nothing would happen to me. Um, and you knew who was bad and who like not to go around. Um, but now I don't let my kid outside, even in the front yard, unless I'm out there with her. Um, we go to Walmart. I'm constantly checking my surroundings. Oh, this person followed me to this aisle and this aisle and this aisle, so I need to go across the store. Um, I mean, it's just I'm constantly watching my back, especially with two little ones now, and they're both girls and really beautiful. Um, I mean, I don't like to go anywhere by myself because you never know what's going to happen anymore. And even out in our town, I still catch myself doing that. It's not as bad as going into like Columbus or anything, but you know, I don't drop Stella off anywhere, um, unless it's at church, and even then, I'm kind of like, I need to be there with her. Um, but I mean, it's totally different from when I was growing up. I believe there's a lot more. I want to say sickos running around. I don't think they're scared to hide anymore.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which is just it's so ironic, wouldn't you say, Mary Jane, that people move from the big city to small towns because they want that rural life, they want that country life, and then you've got such beautiful areas. I feel that way like when I went out to Heard County with Natalie's mom. It's beautiful. I mean, and you have some big farmers, nice houses, and then it's really weird. And this might be a good time to segue into these counties. It's like Heard County, it's beautiful, but then you cut a corner and it's like zombie land. And it just has this weird, the only way I can describe it, it was like a heavy feeling. I felt that way when I went into Grantville as well. That was a very strange city, in my opinion. It was very old and historic and it had beauty and charm, but I felt like people were watching me, if that makes sense. Like it felt heavy. The energy felt heavy. Um, Waverly Hall, I mean, are you guys there? Do you have like one elementary school, one middle school, one high school, kind of small town, one grocery store set up? Or is it big?
Right. We have our local grocery store, and then we have a Dollar General. Um,
No red lights.
And a
no
red
lights.
that's like
um,
signs.
it's one park, just two restaurants, and that's about it. I mean, two gas stations. Everything closes down at 9 o'clock at night.
Gotcha.
Uh,
Let's see.
You know, Sydney and her girls and boy, Randy, they lived with me. We were close. I mean, I'm still close with my babies, but we was, I mean, do we have ups and downs? Of course. But she was, I was telling Jamie, I watched Miss Elaine, and she described who Natalie, and it sounded so much like Sidney. I mean, her kids did not go without,
Mhm.
you know.
I mean, definitely. Mom had her faults and everything, but if we wanted something, she'd make it happen without a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. She was, I mean, she had such a kind smile, which we hear a lot, great smiles, kind smiles. And she just looked like she was sassy and fun to be around. And like,
Yeah.
she'd be like your protector friend that you'd want around at all times,
Yeah.
which, to me, that indicates she probably tried to put up a good fight. So
Oh, yeah.
sounds more like the sheriff's story that he later recounted what would have actually been true.
Right.
Let's see. Can we get into a little bit more about the way that the case is being handled? Again, it's just everyone in these communities is very back the blue. They're very pro law enforcement. Mary Jane, you being the youngest and clearly having seen a lot more scandals and you see headlines nowadays. I mean, there was the guy up in Coweta, the department, I can't remember if he was Department of Homeland Security or Department of Defense guy that got busted for sex trafficking. And then you've got, just all of these people that you may have grown up with that ended up getting becoming addicted. All of you actually throughout your generations may have seen good people that have turned to as I say, the dark side of where they've gotten into trafficking or addiction. And we know that all of those things play hand in hand. They overlap with each other. Mary Jane, if you had something that you would like to tell the world, or even well, let's just say if you had something that you would like to tell the world and law enforcement, what would those messages be regarding your mom and the handling of her case and why she deserves justice?
I know a lot of people are blind to, like, when it comes to law enforcement, that, they're there to serve and protect. They're there to help us whenever we need it. They're not the bad guys, they're the good guys. I mean, everywhere you look, there's always going to be a few bad apples in everything. And those few bad apples give the whole thing a bad name, which isn't always the case, that the whole thing is bad. But definitely, I feel like in Harris County, 90% of these people are totally blind. We were, honestly. We thought the world of Harris County, it was safe. Nothing bad ever happens here until something bad actually does happen. Of course, we all knew, like, drugs are everywhere. But there's really it's an epidemic at this point of how bad it is because it's so easily accessible to everyone. But everyone, I believe, in Harris County is blind, and I just want them to wake up because it is not all, sunshine and roses. It's not. There are a few law enforcement people who they get a big head because they have power. And with power, they think they can control people, and that is not how it should be. My mom's case was handled terribly from the beginning. It was just another crackhead. Basically, that's what she was to them. And she wasn't just that. Yes, she had her faults, and yes, she did do that. I mean, there's no questioning it. But she was also a human being. She was living. She was breathing. She had kids. She had grandkids. She had things going for her in life. I mean, she was living. There's no reason that her case should have been handled just thrown out like, oh, it's no big deal. Like, she was found in the woods. It's okay. I mean, how she was laying. Oh, it's okay how she was. I mean, it's okay, no big deal. That's what happens. No, that's not what happens. It definitely should have been handled differently. Her clothes should not have been burned. Her necklace should not have been given back to us in a baggie full of maggots. Everything from the beginning was terrible. And I wish that I had a time machine and going back and I could, change everything. But I can't. I want law enforcement to realize we need to handle every single case that they go into as potentially a homicide, because you don't know. You really don't know what you're walking into. I mean, I even have the common sense of that, and I didn't go through schooling or anything, so why can't these people who we pay to do this, why can't they do that for us? Why can't we trust them enough to do that? Why did I, at a few weeks, for a few weeks after Mom died, why was I up in the morning checking out my window, making sure no one was driving by? Why was I doing that? Why did I have the responsibility of that? Why couldn't they make me feel safe? Why did they fail her? And it's been, almost 5 years now?
Yeah.
Why isn't this not solved? Like I said, it's not all sunshine and roses. I think people get big heads when they have power. And I think that definitely needs to change. And something needs to be done about that.
Very
I mean,
powerful.
it tells you something that I know of 2 law officers. One, I think, resigned and one retired right after, and I know that both of them was at the scene.
Oh wow. Which we've heard this before too. Particularly, I can only really speak to Natalie's case, but we've heard that within Heard County is like it's basically this system of, I consider it, if you think about like how frats are, right? Like you come in, you got the big brothers, the ones that are calling the shots, and you got your like initiation, and like you gotta have to do that. This isn't a frat. This is law enforcement that are brought in that took these oaths to protect and serve, to potentially save someone's life. And if they're not able to save their life, to get clear answers and other, various tasks. More so, I would say, for detectives specifically that work cases like this. But yeah, we've heard the exact same thing, Miss Debbie, about people resigning within Heard County and leaving and going to other counties, or just leaving the force, period, because this kind of stuff is happening and there's no oversight. And that goes back into what you were saying, Mary Jane. There needs to be changes. There needs to be someone auditing, looking into these departments. It blows my mind sometimes. It really blows my mind that there's not more oversight, that these counties have such power and control. And I get it for the locals. We've had many people in Natalie's community. When I say, I mean, I've lost count of how many locals that we've had come out behind the scenes and tell us stories about, I was a waitress here and there was a drug task force meeting coming in and talking about this, or, something that they were going to do that I knew was wrong. But they're scared to speak out because they live in these communities, and they're then afraid that they're going to be targeted.
Right.
That's got to change. And all of these undetermined deaths have to be, they have to be fixed, because that's actually a bigger problem. The problem with that is that, and that's where it goes all the way up to Governor Kemp, because you don't want homicides in your crime stats. You don't want that data out there, because then it makes your state look bad. So that makes me raise an eyebrow as to how high up this goes. And clearly, we're not insinuating, none of us are insinuating that there's corruption going that high up, but why is there no oversight with this? How can you just take Sidney, where it's clear that this is a homicide. Your town, and I'm going to repeat this every time like I have to, you got Nancy Grace's statement where she talked about Meriwether County and Aunt Tammy and Olivia being missing. It's not inundated with calls. We have little birds all over Heard County. Oh, the detective was over here, spent an hour eating lunch over here. The sheriff does this, he does that, he leaves, he goes home. So clearly they have time. And they put on a good smoke screen.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that they don't do work, but they have time to do the things that they prioritize doing. And with Sidney's case, it's not acceptable to use the excuse that, well, I'm a cop, I see all this stuff, I'm just jaded, I'm just numb, this is just how I am. This is where oversight needs to come in, because what happens there is the stigma that a cop comes in, he starts seeing all these meth heads here and there or whatever, and then they start to generalize Sidney, Olivia, Lauren, Natalie, anyone else into being in this bucket, and therefore, they got around the wrong crowd. What are you gonna do? I got other things to do. That's got to change. That's got to stop. That's got to stop. Jamie, I mean, you've been out there in the trenches with Aunt Tammy from Olivia Fowler's Army, and you've done a lot of legwork, rallying, fundraising, whatever that you guys could do, activism, etc. And clearly all these communities have formed alliances now and are growing in numbers. And unfortunately, there's other families that are now coming into these alliances because there's always a next girl.
Yeah.
There's always someone else that's going to pop up, whether it's Meriwether, Harris, Heard, etc. It's always going to happen. Do you feel like your efforts in your community and surrounding, even I would say surrounding communities that you guys have protested in, do you feel like it's been successful in that people have pushed? And I'm just going to say this specifically for Sidney.
Mm-hmm.
Have they pushed other than you as the family and these other communities that are resharing her story? Do you feel that it's gone on deaf ears, that people are just like, oh, well, it's not my family.
Right.
You know, I'll say hi, you've got my support, but then there's no follow-up. There's no sharing her story. Or do you feel that people have done that?
Some people, that's part of our groups, the Justice for Sidney and the Eminem Moms group and, your group, people like that have, yeah. But other than that,
I think there's definitely like there's a day and age where like we have TikTok and everything and we see, all this bad stuff happening, but it doesn't affect us like where we are in our lives right now. So yeah, we care, but like we really don't care. And I see that when we go places and we do our walk through towns and our rallies and our fundraising. There's many people who come up to us and are like, "Oh, I thought this was solved," or "Oh, I never heard about this. I how did this happen? I mean, it was 5 years ago." Oh, really? Like, yeah, such a small population, but yet not everyone knows about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head with every single thing that you're bringing up here. These are, it's like they're not affected unless it hits their doorstep, or which it's just it's weird to look at from, again, a high level view, because you know how Southerners are. Everyone's up in everyone's business, and everyone, they do get together as communities. And I'm not trying to harp on Southerners. There's a lot of goodness that can be harnessed out of that. But you
With
can't.
that, I think it comes a lot of rumors as well.
True. Very true. But you can't do that and then turn a blind eye to it, because then that's what nefarious people bank on. That's what they bank on, is that, oh, it'll be hot for a minute and then it's going to go cold. Literally, like the case will go cold because people stop saying her name, people stop sharing, people stop caring, and that's got to change. That's got to change. And I think that if ever, with all of these alliances being formed now, because now is the time, some change can happen. I'm hopeful anyways. I am an optimist, and I do believe that with you guys pushing as much as you push, we're always here for you. Natalie's community is always here for you. The bigger picture here is people needing to understand that these cases are happening far too often in these areas. And so you can try to fudge the crime stats and leave something as undetermined and not as a homicide. But when you have family members that are banding together, showing that something's not right here with all of these cases, the spotlight needs to be put on those that are in the authority of calling an autopsy, of conducting, re-interviewing. You know, Sidney's case has now been open, what, for 5 years?
Yeah, going on 5 years.
5 years. You can get people back in. You can re-interview people. You can come into new evidence and re-look at things.
Yeah. And if you're not going to do your job, bring more people in that will.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a bigger piece to this. And I think that's something that Mary Jane, I mean, you just really brought up so many good points, powerful points at that people need to see and understand. And you also have the people that are probably sitting there saying, well, like, what am I going to do? Like, that's part of the problem. It's not what am I going to do? It's what can we do? Sidney was a person. She was a mom, a sister, a daughter that mattered. And her story deserves more exposure and deserves to be heard. How are you guys holding up today?
Frustrated, angered.
I think the sadness and everything is still there, but I think it's turned into more of like, what the heck, man? Like,
Yeah.
really? Like, we're really upset. We're really frustrated. And I mean, frustrated is the best word I could give you. I mean, angry as well.
Yeah.
With me, I know the girls try not to let me, but from the 18th to the 23rd, I just want to sleep. And they ask me why, do I sleep so much? And it came to me, I sleep because of my dreams. I get to see her, and I get to talk to her, and I get to love her. And I think that's why I just shut down.
Yeah, she should still be here, being a part of our lives, enjoying her mom and kids and grandkids, and us looking at the people that we, know that are involved, get to live their life.
Yeah.
And she can't.
And it's not like we can go about our day and not see these people. We see these people.
Yeah.
We come face to face with these people more often than not. And they don't care.
I mean, her baby daughter seen one, and she just shut down. She just walked out of the store. She couldn't. In fact, she was found on Sadie, her baby daughter's birthday. So you can imagine you want to celebrate her birthday, but then that's when Sid was found. So Mary Jane's made it where that's just Sadie's birthday. We don't do anything for Sid that day. We do it before or after, whatever. It's just something I wouldn't want my worst enemy to go through. And I just don't understand why the higher up people don't do something, not unless I believe they're involved.
Is that what your gut tells you, Miss Debbie?
Ma'am?
Is that what your gut tells you?
Yes, ma'am.
I think there are times where we all, I think, catch ourselves and, waiting for her to walk through the door
Yeah.
or hear her laugh or her annoyingly cough or her clammy hands wrapping around us. I mean, there's times where I just want to talk to her or anything. Like, I just wait for her to walk through the door because, that's how she is. And I think we've been waiting 5 years for that, and it hasn't happened, and it'll never happen. And I don't think that we will ever be able to fully grasp that while there are so many questions left unanswered.
I mean, Mary Jane's getting married next month.
Yeah.
And what does she have to show for her mom? A picture.
Yeah.
And it's just not there. It's not there.
Not at all. What would you, well, let's see. I'm trying to see if I can word this in the correct way. Have any of you had conversations with the people that you believe to be responsible for her death?
Yes. I've had messaged Justin, and he just makes me I just want to go over there and but he's acting like he's the victim in all this.
Yes.
And then at one point, he had told me that he wouldn't intentionally hurt Sidney.
Right.
Like, what?
He put her in the hospital
Yeah.
before. He did all kind of things to her before. Mary Jane, myself, and her fiance went over there to talk to him, and I'll let her tell you about that. But then he called and talked to me for I don't know how long. And I would talk to him because I was thinking maybe, I'll get something out of him. But then he said that Sidney wasn't dead, that they had a connection and she wasn't dead. She had just went off with her aunt that was rich, which I don't know who that'd be. And that she's not dead, and
Yeah.
I blew up on him. But Mary Jane heard them tell you about how he acted.
And he just acted cracked out, really. That's the best way to put it. He was talking about how cell phones are a listening device and that the people who did something to Mom were listening in on him. They come by his house every night. They have cameras in his woods. They mess with his cameras. They just weird stuff that, like, bro, like, are you okay? Kind of. But he just, I don't know if he was trying to scare us in any type of way or anything, but I mean, I did let him know that I wasn't afraid of him, and I wasn't afraid of the people who did this to my mom. That if you have a problem with me, come to me, and we can talk about this, and that I'm not afraid of you guys. You guys took a lot from me, and can't hurt me anymore like that.
Take away that power. Yeah. It's just incredibly troubling that this is going on. But I really love that you guys have such a strong family unit and support for each other and are getting out there and continuing to stay out there and say her name and share her story. It's so important to do that. Mary Jane, do you feel now, with kind of knowing that all of these alliances are forming with other missing and murdered in and around what we've unfortunately had to coin the term, the Bermuda Triangle of the South, are you hopeful that maybe that this is sadly what needed to happen, that all of these families had to come together to push for change? Are you hopeful that maybe that day will come at some point?
I am hopeful because of all this, we have gotten a lot more media coverage and we have gotten a lot more interviews. And I hope that it does bring change, and I hope it does bring closure to all families involved. I think it's really messed up that, all these people had to come up missing or murdered or anything else that happened to them. I think it's really messed up that this is what it's taking. And I feel bad for every single family involved because we know how they feel. And but I also, at the same time, I'm very grateful that we have the relationship that we have with certain people like Aunt Tammy. God knows I couldn't imagine life without that woman now. She reminds me so much of my mom.
Yes.
She's
She
a
really
force.
does. Oh yeah.
Yes.
I love her dearly. And Renee, she is just the sweetest woman I know. I don't understand how someone could be so sweet. But
Well, she's the sweet Sydney, and Tammy's the bad Sydney.
Aunt Tammy's the bulldog over there. Someone has to be, and that's very true. I mean, you have to have all of these different personalities that balance. It's like you throw them all in a pot and they work. You got to have the sweet with the Aunt Tammy's got the habanero. I get a little spicy, but I try to be very diplomatic. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. But and then just all Heather Turner's community and all these different communities. That again, very powerful message there, Mary. Such a powerful message, and these people are fighting for their loved ones, and they're going to continue saying their names. And I do hope that we can bring change out of all of this, because it shouldn't you're exactly right. It should not come to this. There shouldn't be this, I call it fortunate yet unfortunate alliance of a trauma bond, essentially, because that's what has brought all of these communities together, is a trauma bond over a death that is undetermined, inconclusive, suspicious, written off, or what have you. It's not a healthy way to be. It's not a healthy place mentally for anyone to be in. I know that there are a lot of true crime people, and they are the backbone of these communities because they shared these stories. But it's like you want to meet people on good terms where you're talking about good things about their loved ones or memories or new friendships and relationships. It's not that, we share this common denominator, which is that we don't have answers for our loved one's case. That's not how this should be. And so I hope that you always have our full support, and we will always be there. You want to go live every week? We can go live every week. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's just,
we appreciate you.
Yes, so much.
of course.
Thank you.
Of course. Are there any other topics that you would like to go over here before we wrap? Is there anything else that you would like to get across to people, or that you would just like to say?
Yeah. The last time Sid was seen was with
initial maybe, or a
Okay.
an
MB.
Yeah, MB on the back of a four-wheeler. We have two eyewitnesses, and exactly where they seen him and her is a straight shot to where she was found. And they interviewed him, and he did a lie detector, and it was inconclusive.
Mhm.
And he says he don't know her, and that's just a lie. But he said he didn't know her, so that's okay.
And my thing with that is, I know him, and I'm not into the drugs and everything. So how do I know him? The only way I know him is through mom. So it makes no sense for him to lie. But I mean, it's gotten him off the hook so far. So
Yeah,
cowardly man, in my opinion, but that's just
exactly.
my humble
Uh,
opinion.
Like I say every single time that I do an interview, be a man up, own for your mistakes. Don't be a coward.
and this man is a common denominator in a lot of the girls.
Yeah.
A lot of the girls' cases. Yeah, and that I'll kind of get a little spicy here for 1 second. That's something that I've always been preaching. I know Aunt Tammy, she'll go off the deep end there. God love her. But these people are cowards, in my opinion. They are cowards. And I'm going to say this generally across multiple cases: predators, abusive husbands, abusive partners, politically connected exes, jealous females, um, gangs, talk of gangs, corruption within law enforcement. You're so big and bad and powerful, yet you need to hide.
Mm.
I mean, that in itself is redundant. You're not that big and bad and powerful if you're hiding. You're not
Exactly.
king of the world that got away with something if you're hiding. If you have a guilty conscience, you're hiding. You're hiding from all of those things. You going to church on Sunday and walking out with a clear conscience that your sins are going to be forgiven for taking someone's life off this earth, or not, like, you're hiding. And so what I would urge people, the good people, whether you be on a civilian level, or whether you be a family member that maybe knows something, or a friend, a true friend that wants to do good, or whether you are a good law enforcement agent, the time to speak up is now. The time to speak up is now, for you to lead by example and to do the right thing.
Exactly.
Amen.
That's all I have.
Yeah, you're so right there. Come forward, tell us what you know.
Because this isn't fair. Honestly, it's not right. It's not okay.
It's not okay because one thing is that we go out and all of us can find things that we think is all right. This is really going to help. And we tell them, and it's like nothing's done.
Okay.
And I don't understand why family and other people have to go out and find the evidence for law enforcement.
Yeah, we shouldn't have to do their job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're not getting paid for it. We didn't go to school for this. Why is it us?
Yet those, it's like, that's something that we heard with Natalie's case. It was just, oh, that's social media, those people digging around, like, they don't know, like, I've got all this, I've got this, I've got that, I've got dog search teams, park your ego at the door, dude. That was my statement to him. I don't care who you think you are. I am not intimidated by you. And like, check your ego at the door, point blank, period. End of discussion. You can have 2 seats in the very back of the classroom. Civilians, now, yes, you do have to field a lot of conspiracy theories and speculation, and you do have to field what's fact, what's this, what's that. I get it. And there are a lot of questionable people that bring things to the table, but there's always a little truth in a lie.
Thank you. Yes.
And we are in a new digital age of, sadly, exposure, if you will. And we are in a digital age where these people clearly have shown their true colors, which is that they don't like that they can't control what people say online. Now, again, that's a double-edged sword because it's a slippery slope. You have to be ethical. Well, in my opinion, you have to try to be as ethical as possible, but they don't hold power there, and this bothers them. Well, sorry, it's where we are. We have a new generation of people that do know how to look, where to look, that do bring some good things to the table. And so instead of chastising the people in these communities that have, like we've seen in Natalie's case, for example, who have taken time out of their day and advocate for the law enforcement, they're getting made fun of. And the community took note of this. I'll say specifically for Natalie's community, they took note of this and they're not happy with that. And how about law enforcement actually takes civilians and families as credible, or at face value of being credible and trying to help? Clearly there are nefarious people that are going to try to say, oh, she was over here, Sidney was over here doing, or I didn't see her, or she was over there, or whatever, to muddy the waters. But that's your job as a detective, to sift through that stuff. That's what you get continued, I would hope, continued education for, and that you get continued training. But sadly, we know that that's not always the case. You know, they're piddling away behind their desk and going to take 1.5-hour lunch breaks.
I would like to say that the person that detective, sergeant, whatever, that supposedly is over Sid's case, or one of the higher ups, we have formed a bond with her. I think that personally she would do a lot more if people over her would let her. I mean, she goes as far to say when she texts us or whatever that she loves us. I mean, we've just formed a bond with her, but I don't think because like I said, everything we find, there's nothing ever come of it.
Yeah. Well, and there's suppression there, and there's the protocol and whatever. But I actually really agree with that, Miss Debbie. I do agree that women were more emotional, which can be good and bad, right? But right. It's more of that nurturing side of it versus men who are transactional or just very can become more jaded or numb or corrupt. Let's just say.
Right.
And so there needs to be change there. I think my biggest two takeaways learning about all of these cases is there needs to be more oversight on police officers and I would say departments as a whole, on the sheriff even.
Yeah.
Sheriff is the power.
Most definitely.
The sheriff is the power in the town. And, you know, we've heard a lot of corruption, speculation. These individuals would say firsthand account knowledge of corruption, of letting things happen in that county, let's just say. And right, it's like what you said before, right is right and wrong is wrong. Mm-hmm. You're abusing power, potentially, allegedly, and in my opinion. That needs to stop. It needs to stop. So
most definitely. And it shouldn't take, which I know I'm getting into something else, but like Natalie Jones. I was watching the live with Adventure with Purposes when the car was found. And I just think that it's really weird that it was found as soon as these, you know, high streaming YouTubers came in. Mm-hmm. I don't think it should take something like that, or something like all of our families banding together to make change. I don't, or something being found or something being taken care of. I think they should do their job, and it should have been done from the get-go. Natalie Jones should have been found from the get-go. You could have seen that car from the road. Like my mom, I mean, she wasn't there. She disappeared. Like, come on. Hunters found her. Really? Like, and like in Olivia's case too. Like, come on. It doesn't make sense on why certain things have to happen to get a fire under someone.
Yeah. Well, unluckily for them, the spotlight is on all of these counties now. I am,
Right.
I will say that confidently. Spotlight, especially with Olivia's case, people are watching. I think that they have been watching for quite some time. There's a bigger story here. I'm hopeful that unravels. And so I just really, I hate that everyone came together in this manner, but I'm glad that it did. And we just have to keep saying their names and telling their stories. Any final words here for people?
That Sidney mattered. They all mattered. If you know something, you can remain anonymous. Just please come forward. Let us know.
Yeah. Do the right thing.
Yeah.
Because these are home-rooted issues. This isn't clearly the public at large outside of Georgia or even the South, let's just say, they can help by sharing these videos, by sharing, whether it's this video, posting it, on their other socials, whether it's sharing any of these missing and unalive people that have accounts. Every one of these families has accounts, or communities has accounts on different social media platforms. So that helps keep their stories alive. But for the local people, for the people that live in these communities, for the people that live in the South, these are your communities. And this is something I've told many people that have reached out to us in Natalie's community, is that these are your communities. This is you coming behind the scenes and telling us your stories of, outside of maybe just Natalie's case, like you're scared to let your kids out. You see this going on. You work in government, like you have just all kind of various accounts. These are your communities. You don't, right now you have murderers that are walking around in your communities, and we need to stop normalizing that, oh, it's just another body, or oh, it's just another girl that's gone missing, or oh, it's just another guy that's found unalive under suspicious circumstances, or oh, it's just another person that OD'd off of whatever. Stop the cycle of normalizing this into a trauma that shouldn't be. We need to get back to a healthy place of speaking up, speaking out, doing the right thing, and leading by example. And it's sad to me that you and other community members of these victims are the ones doing that, and not politicians, local politicians, state politicians, government officials. This has got to change.
Yeah.
This has got to change. That's really my last thing here. Well, thank you all for being here. This was Mary Jane, you're like, you should go on and I don't know what your line of work is and what you want to do, but you have an incredible speaking voice and you're very eloquent and well put together. I appreciate you for all of your insight, and Jamie, as always, it's always a pleasure. And Miss Debbie, I really appreciate hearing a mother's perspective on her daughter. And these are 3 generations of women advocating for one cause with 3 different perspectives on things. And This isn't just nothing. This is something that needs to get solved now.
I would just like to thank you again
Yeah.
for doing this for us.
You're very welcome. Very welcome. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Please, if you're able to comment, share, ask questions, Jamie will probably be in the comments, and happy to answer any questions that you guys have. But please consider sharing this and
Please pray for us, because
Yeah.
if it wasn't for God, none of us would be able to say anything.
yes,
And
ma'am.
also, we went through a little drama a couple weeks ago, and we had to make a new Justice for Sydney Facebook page. I believe it is the only one up and running now. It's Justice for Sydney, ran by the family. We are only at 100 members right now. If everyone could go and join that page, they might have joined the last page and like, oh God, what happened to it? Well, it got taken down. We have a new page ran by us, and everything that comes and posts in that group is okay by us, not someone else who has nothing to do with this.
Yeah. Go check them out, you guys. Give them a follow. Share Sydney's story. And stay tuned. There's more to come. So
Thank you.
thank you, ladies. Have a nice weekend.
You
You
too.
too. Bye.
Bye.